Right, let's speak now to risk analyst and former diplomat, Dr. Kingsley Makhubela. Dr. Kingsley, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. Is this a organized chaos, if you like, by President Donald Trump and his administration on international law?
Good evening, Thabo. Well, you know, this marks a strategic shift from the MAGA philosophy of making America great again to the neocon philosophy that was really added primacy during the Bush administration, where the regime change was the cornerstone of the neocon. So clearly there's a strategic shift in policy, moving away from what Donald Trump promised to be a peacemaking president, a deal-making president. So that's where the issue is. But it raises, it creates a serious problem because Nicolás Maduro, he's a de jure president. The government that he's leading is a de jure government. It's not an illegitimate government. Even though the American may argue that his government is illegitimate, one can also make a similar argument that when President Trump was arguing about the legitimacy of the Biden administration, should there have been an outside intervention to resolve dispute related to elections? And dispute related to election are quite common. We've just had that here in Tanzania. And you're going to find that around the world. Is that an excuse really to violate international law and remove a sitting head of state? It's something that really renders the international system useless.
What does it put America as, I mean, in terms of its legitimacy and its credibility in a rules-based global order?
You know, it's international rule-based order. There has been an idea to bring an argument that speaks about rules-based order, and rules are determined somewhere, and the implementation of this rule is expected on everyone. What we are talking about is international-based rules. So the international law-based rules. That's why you must be able to distinguish that from what has been trying to emerge from the Western world, which I tend to think now there's a fracture within the US and their transatlantic partners around this rule-based order. Because if you listen to what Stammer was saying, it's a straightforward matter. It's a matter that you don't require to consult your partners. If your partner goes into a country and removes a sitting head of state, it's going to happen to everyone. And if you look at the charges that are proffered against Maduro, they include possession of arms and so on, and money laundering. You know, it's uncharted territory now. If that is accepted by the US court, Thabo, I can tell you that we must be on the lookout, countries like South Africa. They will come after Ramaphosa for saying he laundered US dollars. So they would have an argument against that. So, you know, it sets a total unprecedented extrajudiciary or extraterritoriality law hands of the United States. Is something that needs to be managed quite carefully.
South Africa has called for an urgent seating of the UN Security Council, saying this is a violation of the UN Charter. Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, says he is deeply alarmed by the recent escalation in Venezuela, culminating with today's United States military action in the country, which has potential worrying implications for the region. He says this could be setting bad precedents. The global majority, how are they going to view this? Are they going to view this as Donald Trump dealing with political oppression, helping the people of Venezuela, and dealing with narco-terrorism?
Well, the issue here is removing a sitting head of state. That's illegal in terms of international law. I think the United States last removed Noriega in Panama and really sentenced him. He served some time in the US and in France, and later on he was sent back to Panama, where he died after serving some years there. So I just don't think that the United Nations Security Council will come up with any tangible approach. Remember, the US has a veto power within the Security Council, so you are likely to see even a presidential statement that will condemn. What you will see is member state or members of the Security Council will come very harsh on the United States, countries like Russia and China will be very harsh in their criticism, but it will be limited to that. But it really creates and it opens up a loophole for the most powerful countries to really disregard international law and take unilateral action. We're not surprised by this, Thabo, because you may have seen about a month ago when the United States released the National Security Strategy, when it really maps out the Monroe Doctrine and how it needs to control the neighborhood and how it needs to deal with forces that are seen to be conniving or aligning themselves with the U.S. adversaries. And Venezuela is a classical example. Also, it's not only the question of oil. I mean, quite honestly, there's oil, but the geostrategic importance and the geostrategic assessment of the United States is what is at the core of this. Of course, Venezuela has about, I think, 303 billion barrels of oil in reserves, which makes it one of the, actually is the top country in terms of oil reserves, followed by Iran, which is about 209 billion barrels. So the United States is quite concerned about the control of the resources there. But at the bigger picture level is a question of geostrategic hegemony and reasserting its power within the South America and the Southern Hemisphere.
So, I mean, you've got Russia already reported in some instances having come out to say the U.S. military strike on Venezuela deeply concerning and condemnable. Russia saying there's no substantive basis for this type of action. Does this situation strengthen South Africa's case? I mean, in terms of South Africa, United States relationship, to say some of the things that Trump does and says about particularly countries in Africa, maybe even smaller countries or smaller economies, are not based on any fact?
Well, the United States doesn't operate on facts. It operates on intuition, it operates on strategic interests, and is quite keen to frame anything as national security threat. And once they have done that, they would have support even across the Pennsylvania, the House. So Trump, of course, did consult the House before taking this operation. It would be unprecedented if he didn't do that. But I think to put troops on the ground or boots on the ground, he will require concurrence of Congress. He would have to declare war, and that would be a huge challenge, given the fact that it's a very difficult area, Venezuela, to protect Thabo. What is still baffling at this minute is how did the U.S. manage to carry out this operation without dismantling the air defense system of Venezuela, using low-flying helicopters. So quite honestly, there's been some level of collaboration. I wouldn't be surprised if you see reprisal by those who are still remaining in Venezuela against possible collaborators. Because there's been a 50 million bounty on Maduro's head. Is it the problem of Maduro or the problem of the entire leadership of Venezuela? It has been framed as a problem of Maduro. And that's why they're able to take him out easily. But the challenge now is how to govern Venezuela. Given the dense population within Caracas and the distribution of weapons that was done in the last few weeks, we are likely to see serious killings going on if the situation is not properly managed.
Yeah. And we just read here that the Minister of Defense in Venezuela says, well, they will not sit back and watch any military invasion in Venezuela. I mean, is that just a blank threat, or is there really substance to it?
Well, there's substance in it, Thabo, because his house was attacked. General Lopez's house was attacked also, but it appears that he was not there. He survived that. We still to verify this, if the footage indeed is true. He may as well have been killed, because what we're going to see between now and tomorrow, at least, it's a lot of fake news. It's a lot of fake news that will be circulating to try to project different information. I'll be very careful not to take everything at face value until there's confirmation about a host of related issues, because earlier reports were saying General Lopez has been killed, but all of a sudden he's suffering. So we need to still verify that.
Let's circle back to the UN Security Council now, its legitimacy and its credibility. If, as you say, it's unable to act except for strong condemnation in this particular matter, what's the future for that body then?
Well, the future for the body, it's obsolete as we are talking. There's been paralysis of the Security Council on many issues, not only on this one. So the Security Council and the UN system is becoming irrelevant in terms of ordinary people, in terms of its mandate, mainly because of the veto power within the Security Council. So there's a power play within the Security Council that is playing itself there. But at a broader strategic level again, is this emergence of multipolarity that is really causing serious problems. It's causing these fractures within multilateral system as countries are trying to define and identify their position, where they stand on some of these issues or where they shouldn't stand on these issues. Among those countries is South Africa. South Africa is a bit confused about how to deal with this multipolar world that is emerging. South Africa has also aligned itself with European vis-a-vis their conflict with Donald Trump. You may have seen South Africa sometimes in November, Tabo, voting for the return of the children at the General Assembly resolution, a resolution that traditionally South Africa abstained. So you ask yourself why all of a sudden, there's a position of the European Union. South Africa has taken a position of the European Union also on the Russia issue, that there must be ceasefire, even though it has been agreed within the framework that Trump is developing, that ceasefire will be a byproduct of negotiation. So this multipolar fracture that is happening, it's really causing a lot of confusion. Countries that are very strategic and that are able to hedge their interests across are likely to survive this. Countries that are quick to change position or take new positions are likely to find themselves in a very dicey position.
Dr. Kingsley, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Risk analyst and former diplomat, Dr. Kingsley Makhubela.